do I want to try to learn how to code? What's the easiest way to get into that? I think a good place to start, maybe, this is not how I learned how to code. My path was different, but the way I'm going to describe it, I'm not saying it's the right one. I'm going to go down a process of teaching you the quickest path to start designing in code. All right, so what I'm thinking about doing is making some content specifically targeted to Figma users. I've started calling it Code Curious. If you've never really taken the plunge into learning how to transition your design into code or start to even think about designing first in code. So I guess I'm gonna start real basic, like making relationships between things in Figma and code. When you select the frame tool and you just click in the middle of the screen, boom, it just makes a 100 by 100 frame. It's got a white background, and those are kind of like your defaults. Obviously, you can also drag a frame any size you want, but it still has a default white background, which sits nicely off of that very light gray Figma background, which, if you don't know, as long as you're not selecting anything or have anything selected in your layers palette, you can change that. You can change that here, right? You know that. The frame is like, it's really a container that you can add styles to. You can add a fill, a stroke, you can add shadow effects. So it's kind of like it's a container for styles, and then you can put text in it, other frames, you can put images, you can put anything you want basically inside a frame, and you can just nest them infinitely. The best connection here, thinking about this in code, is like a frame is the equivalent of a div in HTML. So a good place to start, there's a site called codepen.io, and Codepen, it's an awesome resource, a place where you can write your own HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So the things that I want to talk about are HTML and CSS. So you put something in here and it's going to show up down here. You can change the orientation of this. If you're designing in code, you want to be able to write your code, write your styles, and then kind of see the result of it. And another thing I'll tell you real quick, Codepen, if you go to kind of the homepage, you can just, look for inspiration. I mean, there's some wild stuff on here. It's very, very cool. It's a great resource. You can search pins if you're looking for navigation or something. So you can see things that are like tagged with navigation, then you can go to that. You can interact with it, right? This is a pin. And then you can kind of see like, okay, well, how did they build that? And it's just kind of it's a nice way to be able to look at what other people are doing and get inspired. It's very cool. Back to Figma. If you come in here and you create a frame with a background of white, what is that equivalent in code? In HTML, you have these tags. These are elements. Let's just bring up ChatGPT. What are HTML elements? An H1 tag, paragraph tag, an image tag, div, which is a division or container, or frame if you want to use like Figma parlance. And there's a lot of these, but we're going to start with most commonly used element, and it's an element that you can do a lot of stuff with. You can do very similar stuff with all of these. This right here, this is our starting point. This is like a frame. Now the difference, if I put a div in here, the browser has like a default white background. So in Figma, there's the page background. So if it's white, I don't really see this div, or sorry, this frame. So, okay, I want to talk about this a little bit more. So all tags have an open and a close, or an opening tag and a closing tag. Sorry, I don't know what I said. Elements, all elements, HTML elements, and not necessarily do they all have it. This is why code can be very confusing, because there's a lot of little nuance and stuff, and I don't want to focus on the nuance, but most have an opening and closing tag. You could put a div inside of a div. I'm not logged in. Let me log in. So this div is nested inside of this div. Since there's no really any underlying or any default styling for a div, I mean, they're just transparent containers or boxes. So if we want to see what these things maybe look like and how they act, I'm going to introduce the idea of CSS. And we're not going to spend too much time on this because I want to show you a different way, but I think this is important just to kind of grasp like what is going on with a div. So we're going to go on the div. Inside the opening tag, you say class, and then you say equals, and then you open and close your quotation marks. You can put a class name inside of here. So we're gonna name this frame. You can name it anything you want, but just because we're talking about frames in Figma, I'm gonna go ahead and just use that class name of frame. Now, frame, again, nothing really changed here, right? Frame will be the name of a CSS class that I can then style. And the way I make a connection between these two things, I say dot or period class. And then if I want to add styles to this, I have an opening and closing curly brackets. So this right here, this is the start. We're only getting started here. This right here, sorry, I said class. Erase all that, forget that. Frame. Whatever I do here will happen here. Let's start with color. I'm gonna say, and also I wanna get rid of this. Now I'm gonna say color red. It changed the text color to red. So color is red. Let's make a background color, and we'll make it blue. So look at that. So we've got a blue background and red content. I think that's a little weird that it's just called color. Maybe it should be like text color. We're not gonna spend a whole lot of time in CSS because I'm gonna show you something really cool that I think will speed up how quick you can start building stuff. Now you'll notice, again, browsers have like some default styling. There's like some initial padding, or maybe it's margin, I can't remember. And there's ways to like reset that. I don't wanna spend too much time in that. There's just some initial padding so your stuff isn't smushed up against the edges. But a lot of times you do want stuff smushed up against the edges, or you want to at least have control over that. We're not gonna talk about that right now. Right now, we're just gonna kind of go over some really basic concepts here. So the idea of a div, or something interesting about a div, see how this spans the full width? No matter what size this is, it's gonna always just be full width, minus a little bit of padding. I'm gonna open this in full page view in a new tab. So it spans the full width. That's a div. Anytime you put a div, the default behavior of a div is it spans full width. And the default of the height is whatever the size of the content is nested inside of it. So we're gonna go back here. So it's the same screen. Let's make this screen a little smaller. And I'm just gonna go ahead and do lorem. We're gonna generate, I don't know, like 5 paragraphs. Now watch this. It's going to take a second to upload. So the height is determined by what content is in there. Again, because it spans the full width, that div is going to adjust. And gosh, these colors are terrible. Let's make the background color gray and white. Gosh, it's terrible. Whoops. That's maybe slightly better. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So the div, it's full width, but the height is determined by the content inside. Like it's gonna naturally make enough room for whatever the content is. Okay, well let's just keep it to 1 paragraph so we can kind of see this all a little bit better. There's color, there's background color, and we'll use another thing called padding. 16 pixels. So what that does in this frame, in this div, we've got a color of white, text color of white, background color of gray, padding of 16. A couple more things to kind of understand here. And I'm going to make this even smaller, just like 2 paragraphs here. And I'm going to go ahead and just like indent that a little bit. Okay, so check this out. So if I copy this, it's going to be the same thing because this div also has the same class of frame. And I could make this is different content, but the frame still has the same background color and padding. Now you might be looking at this thinking like, that's kind of weird. I would have expected maybe space in between there. There is no space in between elements. Well, I should not all elements. There's no space in between divs. They just butt right up against each other. Like if I do this, now this frame has this space between is set to 8. In HTML, a div, it would be, if you just nest divs naturally, it's like this. They're just butted up right against each other. So let's do this. Let's do border, what do you do? 1 pixel dark gray. Can I do that? A border 1 pixel black. Let's just do black. See if that's my problem. I forget the syntax for border. Isn't that terrible? Border, maybe I do border width 1 pixel, border color, a black. Is that gonna do it? Border. Where's the border? Why am I not getting a border? This is terrible. Am I gonna edit this out? Maybe, maybe not. How to add border. Border width, border style. Oh, I need solid. That's right. I'm gonna explain this, but I'm getting a little bit too far. So CSS often has kind of long form and short form, or longhand and shorthand. If I say border style and say solid, now you'll see it. But there's another way to write all of this in CSS. You can just, can I check that? Yeah. So you can just say border and then you say 1 pixel solid black. 1 pixel solid. Okay. That's why that wasn't working. So that's just another way to write that out. Any good text editor, even in something here like Codepen, I can just type in div and I hit tab and it makes the element for me. I can also say div dot frame and watch what this does. It puts all that stuff in for me. New stuff here. So I've got 3 divs. They're all on the same level. So they're all siblings. I could take these 2 divs and put them in here and see how now they're nested. But it still takes all of the same white text, gray background, 16 padding. So it takes all that and it puts it in there. But now let me back up a little bit. Let me take these out of here. I want to try to describe classes and how you use them, or just how, like, what this relationship between this class, what this all means. So now if I name this like frame 2, there's no CSS class with this name yet. But if I go in here and I do frame 2, again, opening and closing, and then I could do like a background color is dark gray. I can do that, right? Is there no dark gray? And I just want to reiterate, like, the reason why I think this is so cool in 2024, why to learn how to code, even just like super basic stuff. With ChatGPT, you have a constant 24/7 tutor where you can just ask questions. You don't have to like go to Google and try to find some. Once you understand the fundamentals, you can use ChatGPT or AI or whatever. You can use it to your advantage. But you got to learn the fundamentals. Yes, you can copy code out of Figma, but if you don't really understand what's going on, when things don't work exactly like you thought, that's when it kind of breaks down. So that's why we're learning how to code, at least the basics. Yeah, what are HTML colors? Okay, yeah, I guess there's not. Yeah, we're not talking about RGB and all that. I thought maybe they had like some different variations of gray. Oh, maybe that's why, because I said dark gray. Dark gray. Yeah, it's not working. Anyway, let's just make it blue, whatever. We're just working with some weird defaults here. So frame two, that connects this div to these classes, to these styles. And it's the same thing. It's like, this is probably like super basic, but I just want to reiterate, like, there's a little bit of like, you have to know kind of the language, the syntax, but it's very, very simple. It's so simple. And the more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it. If you're like me, you're going to find yourself like, okay, maybe I'll kind of sketch something out in Figma because it's quick and I can draw boxes and place them where I want. But eventually, once you kind of get all the tools, like the knowledge of how to do this in code, I think you're going to jump into code a lot sooner rather than like creating an entire pixel perfect website or native app or whatever you're designing in Figma. Instead of spending all that time and effort into creating a Figma file, you're going to like get into code and you're going to start making that in real life. I don't know. In rant. Frame 3, and we're gonna go like background color orange. So now I want to tie it to this one, so we got to just say frame 3. This will go orange. Now again, it's not picking up any of this other stuff. Now I could go in here and I could say padding 16, and then now that one has it. I could add that to here. So what you might be noticing here is like you're doing padding 16 multiple times. So I'm going to introduce this other idea. So what if instead of having padding 16 on all these, what if I just had like padding 16 and I just take this and I take it out of all of these? What if I want to apply this to all these boxes? Well, you can have multiple classes. So I'm going to just put padding 16 in there. So boom, we add padding 16. I'm going to go here, padding 16. But see that? So I'm just adding padding 16 to all of these. I think that's cool. I mean, it's powerful. And that's like, I'm going to show you a framework that has all this stuff pre-built for you so you can build stuff out really, really quick. And you can have an infinite number of classes here. Or you can create, a bunch of styles inside a single class, or you can have one class that does one thing and then just add multiples of those here. There are people who will argue all day about which is the right way to do it. Over the years, the thinking about how to structure and architect good CSS has changed a lot. But what I'm going to introduce you to is something called Tailwind, which basically is a framework. It kind of allows you to not have to write CSS because it has a ton of classes pre-made for you that are like this. But instead of saying padding 16, it's actually just P16. And there's P8 and P12 and P2 and P1 and PX for like 1 pixel. It's got all of those classes pre-built, so you can just go in here and you don't have to think about, I want to create a class for this. That class already exists. And there's tons of classes that already exist. And there's enough of them that you can make pretty much any interface you want. TailwindCSS.com. This is, let's go to the docs. Well, here, let's just look at this image on the front here. And it kind of gives you an idea. It's kind of building this thing out. But see all these classes? So let's just look at the div, right? Because that's what we learned so far. So div with a class of PT6 space Y4. That's padding top 6 space in the Y or direction of 4. and then text center. It's super powerful. Tons of people use it. I'm a huge fan. I've been using it for years now, and I kind of never look back. And I think it's just an amazing way for designers to jump into code and be able to really quickly kind of build stuff out. All these different elements, they all are 100% worth learning because they mean something to the browser and to the person using it and looking at it, and it gives structure to the content, and it's good stuff to learn. But theoretically, this layout could all be divs, and that's why I started with divs. So this is Tailwind in the docs. You can see, we scroll here on the left, they've got everything kind of divided up into these sections. So like we were looking at padding, right? So look at this. This is a big scroll bar here, but it's like P0 is padding 0. PX0 is, so X and Y, let's see here. X horizontal, Y vertical, right? So that's common in Tailwind parlance. It's like this would be padding on the X axis, which would be left and right, or padding on the Y axis would be top and bottom. So it's just like a nice shorthand. And you'll see that in other classes. So it goes up. There's increments here. P1 would be padding of, well, it's 0.25 REM. So the 1 doesn't mean pixel. It's a progressive numerical system that's consistent through other classes that you'll see. Yeah, here it is. Yeah, so all those values for like padding, it's the same for margin, and you're going to find that this is used a lot. But this is the scale. And I'm not going to get into rims and all that, but basically 8. So padding top 8, padding bottom 8, that 8 is always going to represent 2 rims or 32 pixels. Yeah, so that's padding. There's all kinds of these classes, and it's check it out. So what I'm going to do in this I'm going to just name this Intro to HTML Tailwind. So what I can do is I can go here into the settings of this pen. You've got all these settings you can change. So under CSS, I will show you this here in a second, but you can go to add external style sheets and pens. So what I can do, if I just search for Tailwind CSS, there it is right there. There's something you got to take note of. This is version 2.219. And there's a reason why it only goes up to 2.219. And Tailwind, if we look at Tailwind, oh yeah, there it is right there, 3.41. They've made some significant changes to it, some really powerful stuff that currently you cannot use in Codepen. There actually might be a way to do it, but to get started, you've got access to a ton of stuff with Tailwind. So you see that, so I searched for it, and it automatically adds this CSS file that you then have access to in your pen, in your Codepen. So I'm gonna hit save and close. So let's go ahead and just get rid of all of these classes. I'll leave the attribute there so we can quickly get into it. And I'm gonna get rid of all of the CSS. And I'm gonna minimize this because we're not gonna use this anymore at all. But I'm gonna restyle these. So now that I have Tailwind, just imagine that like all these classes are already pre-written for me and I have access to them. So like background, and then I'm gonna name the color. Let's go gray. And then it has lightness or darkness, which are values from 1 to 900 with increments of 100. So if I go gray 500, that's like right in the middle. And you'll see, boom, that's gray 500. Background gray 500. I can do gray 300, and you'll see that it's going to be lighter. I could do 900, and you'll see that it gets darker. Now that's only affecting the background. Remember we looked at the class, or we looked at the style for color was the text color. Well, in Tailwind, it's text, and then I'm going to say white. Text white. So white and black are 2 colors that you don't need to give 100 through 900 because it's just white or black. So background gray, 900, text white. Default text is black. That's just default what the browser is set up to do. And then I'm going to do, what was it, padding. I'm not going to go to 16 because 16, remember, 16 is not 16 pixels. So we'll do like P4. So something else, maybe you noticed here, I kind of forgot to, I was going to show you something, which I don't have to show you now because Tailwind does it automatically. So Tailwind has, remember when the browser had that border around it? Tailwind has what's called a reset. Let me go back to the settings here. CSS base. So I'm here in the pen settings under CSS, and see this CSS base. There's things that have become known as like resets. Normalize and reset are kind of the really common ones. And it's basically just a set of kind of styles or configuration to say, browser, get rid of all your kind of default styles or get rid of a lot of them, more along the lines of like layout. And it just, one of the main things that it does, it removes that border around your HTML window. HTML body. But Tailwind also does that, and I kind of forgot that. So we've got background gray 900. Let's give this one, background Was this one orange? Orange, 500. Oh, you know what? Let's do red 500. Orange is not part of the default in Tailwind 2. So red 500, and we'll do padding 4. And then here we'll go backgrounds, blue 300. And maybe I'll even do text blue 900, right? And then we can do padding 4. So that's kind of like, I'm probably going to wrap it up here pretty soon because I think that's a lot to kind of take in here. You can get pretty far just understanding, divs and classes, and specifically Tailwind classes, that if you go to Tailwind documentation, you can read about all of these classes. And maybe your homework is look at some of the layout stuff. I would maybe look at Flexbox first. It's kind of wild and it's a little bit tricky at first, but it's very, very cool and very powerful. It's a lot like auto layout. It's a lot of this stuff here. So when I can click the direction, I can make things wrap or not. I can set the distance between things, the padding around it, all that stuff. You can do all that with Flexbox. So I think that's probably the next thing we're going to tackle. But again, just with this here, hopefully that gives you like at least a starting point, at least like a little nugget of information that's like, ooh, I kind of like that. It's maybe easier than I thought. As you get started, you're probably going to struggle with like, oh wait, opening. Oh, what did I miss? Oh, I missed the close. If you mess up your syntax, it's pretty forgiving. And then don't hesitate to like, copy and paste it into ChatGPT and like get some feedback there. But understanding like classes, we're using Tailwind. There's a bunch of pre-built classes that I can just pipe in here and then boom, start laying stuff out and start exploring stuff. And the beauty is like, you can just go right here and be like, ooh, that's a little dark. Like what does 800 look like? Okay, that's maybe a little better. And you can just kind of dial stuff in here where you just get kind of an idea in Figma, like, this is kind of what I want to do. As you get your rough concept, spend the time here because this is getting you closer to, being able to ship something or commit something to the repo of the project you're working on and shipping it to live or production or whatever. But anyway, I think I got to end this thing here. I think I've thrown a lot at you here. Thank you for watching. If this was helpful, let me know in the comments. If it was not helpful, let me know in the comments. If there's anything you're confused about, and there will be more. I'm gonna make some more videos on this same kind of like Figma to code, learning how to code. Just hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. That really helps out the channel. It helps me get more exposure to help other people who are like you, who want to learn more how to do this stuff. Let me go back to the main camera here. Yeah, my name is Nathan Gross. This is No More Design, where I'm gonna teach you as much as I can about how to get out of Figma, spend a little bit less time in Figma and more time in making something in the real world. That's what I want to do. So thank you for watching. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. See ya.